Wait, real quick. What's the definition of a quality lead, just so we're on the same page?
Meaning that there's a benefit for them.
Got it.
Feel like I put a lot of time and effort, and there's nothing resulting from it. So it's a little disheartening. You know what I
Sure.
mean? I don't like to fail, right? So I would like take it home. I would think about it. I would analyze, like, on almost every call. I would say, okay, what did I say or what could I have said to get that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would look at, let's say KG for example, and it's the same loan. I'm guessing it's the same loan. So why is he having success and I'm not, right?
Sure.
So that's what I don't blame it on like anything else. I would like internalize it, look at me first. The first thing I do is I put it on me. And right now I'm just feeling the pressure that I put on myself.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and it's and I don't want to take it home because I have like wife and kids. And
Sure.
I want to make sure that when I go home, they see the happy dad. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be like get frustrated with them and stuff like that. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you letting me document this issue because I think it is a common issue, regardless if you're a parent or not. Regardless if you have outside responsibilities. I think that just having the problem of bringing it home with you, where it resonates, it's kind of a it's going to be a win-win. What you're going through right now is actually very close to where you need to be. Right. It's like you're always going to face the grind and if you find a way to push past it, it'll make sense because every time you go through like a defeat, so on called, what you hold in your head when you go home, what you're analyzing is where you went wrong, right? And so if you're constantly going and analyzing, what if I did this, what if I did that, it's actually teaching you where you could possibly improve. Whereas most agents will just kind of take it and brush off, right? And just kind of blame external factors. So the fact that you have the characteristics to say, hey, it's me, I need to figure this out, is powerful, while at the same time it can also cause internal doubt, right? And so, you know, looking at where you're at right now, what you might say is that, man, it's me, it's something that I'm doing, right? Because all my colleagues right behind me is finding good success. It must be me. And what happens when you talk to yourself like this without reassuring yourself that you're gonna figure it out, then it just becomes a one direction, and it's saying, oh man, you're fucking up, you're fucking up, you're fucking up, right? You have good patience because you are consistently working. And so I think it's a good example here where we just have to realize where our path is, right? What are we trying to achieve? And so what I would recommend, just kind of now knowing kind of your numbers and looking at where you're at right now, is that you found a good pocket of business, right? And we saw the result of it in that wave. And that was you. It was no one else, right? You found that. And so now it's a matter of kind of learning from what you have right now. And if you do accept full blame for it, you have to, before you leave and go home, you have to do the assessment before, in order to kind of not take that negative side with you, while at the same time staying motivated to figure it out, right? Because where it actually becomes an anchor and it actually holds you back is when all you're saying is that, oh man, I'm messing up, or man, I shouldn't have done that, I should have done this, and you kind of forget when you were doing good, right? And so I guess where I'm getting at is you really kind of need to break it down to a system and almost organize it in a way where you're not veering off to the side, right? What I think eats you up is when you veer to the side or when you veer off of path, because then it puts everything behind you. Next thing you know, you don't have a lock, you don't even have any pricings. There's like nothing actually makes it to the gate, right? Nothing actually gets past. And sometimes we blind ourselves thinking that, oh man, this person should really do this refinance, right? You should really, really do it. And there are only so many that we can convince to do it. And so this, I think, is what you're assessing, is trying to say, okay, well, I seem to have got them all the way up to this point, and then I lost them. Fuck, what did I do? Because that was a lot of time. As salesmen, mentally, we kind of realize the income potential, right? Whether we like to or not, we envision it. So we're like, okay, cool. So I got X amount of dollars from there, from here, and that's just something that we all kind of do. While at the same time we have to, if we had a system, an organized system, like our system here on our team is dub, right? You just find a way to get your 2 points per day. And if you think about it, a lock, if set up with the right expectations, should become an elevation the next day, right? And so then you have the cycle. So one lock will eventually become, so you should naturally have two, but it's just a matter of figuring out kind of that rhythm, right? How do I get it in that line? And what I found when I was in your state, because I got to a state where I felt like I was just beating a dead horse, right? Like nothing I was doing was going right, and I was actually attracting most of it because I was kind of just down on myself, and I noticed that I was only paying attention to negative things, and when I did these few things that I'm gonna share with you, and I hope that you do implement them, is that when you go down that path, it only gets more heavier, and so now you start reacting differently to family, right? Like you're just consumed with work, where you're almost all you're thinking about is when can I get in? This is what I got to do, and these are the fires. And so with a system, there should already be an answer to it, and it'll get to a point where it's just very fast. So you may have what seems to be like a lot of fires. When you take a step back, you kind of know, like, regardless of whatever happens, it will be resolved, right? So don't take all of the weight on you as if you're the only one, because we do have a lot of support roles, right? And so we could send them down the path of, getting with our LOA to fix a couple issues. I guess it just depends on what the issue is. But if we back up and we say, okay, I need a consistent line of business, of incoming business, so that I have the confidence knowing that is there. Because when you have the confidence knowing that you're seeing the business come in, you're stronger on the phone, right? You sound different putting out a fire as if versus if you didn't have any points on the board, because you're like, fuck, I got to get off the phone. Yeah, you sound, ultimately, and this is something that we have to work on, but we can only work on it if we go through it and catch ourselves, and that's what you're doing. So you're not doing anything wrong. I could tell you that in being in your situation plenty of times, bro. Plenty of times I've started from the rock bottom and then have to build up, right? And I would say that the only real thing that actually kept me pushing was just the motive, right? And the motive is really understanding what the alternative is. And so if you understand the alternative, and the reason why we pick sales is because the upside and the freedom that we can establish for our family. And so I think you appreciate that, but where where what keeps us motivated to keep going through the grind, I don't think you need motivation because you're going through the grind. I see you. But how do you respond to, the even what I'm doing, like the time I'm putting in, and the amount of calls, the amount of actions, it seems like you're moving a lot, but nothing is actually moving forward, is when you take a step back and you really analyze and you give yourself some time to do this, because we have kids, right? We have a outside life, and sometimes we don't get a moment to ourselves until literally we walk in, right? Because it's busy. It's just busy. I got to get the kids up. I got to get them ready. I got to make breakfast. Fuck, I got to be over here by this time, and then you got traffic. And the next thing you know, by the time you get a moment to yourself, now you're clocking in, right? And so if this sounds familiar, then it's important that number one is you establish some sort of morning routine. I like to try to get up and go to the gym. I'm not saying you got to go to the gym, but do that morning routine to actually invest in yourself, something that you enjoy, something like you're analyzing a lot of the stuff, right? It'll help you let go of it, because you know that you have a system and you could do it the next morning, right? And that way, when you let go, you have that time designated. And what happens is when you wake up a couple hours early before your kids, I do this. The whole house is mine. Quiet, there's no traffic, I don't check my phone, I don't check my email, I don't even fucking think about work, right? All I think about is something that I can do to invest in myself. And what happens is when you get primed and that's first what you do, you're actually more ready for everything else, right? Whether you walk in, and that's what you need, I believe, is probably the main component that you need right now, is just to reframe your mindset. because you have the right mindset to push you through the grind, but now you're at a challenge where it's biting back, right? You now it's getting to a point where it gets tighter. You know, some shit is scary to think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like fuck, dude. Like how am I gonna do this? This shit's not adding up, and then next thing you got voices from the wife, like, hey babe, what's gonna happen? What's it, you know? And then you're like, oh, I got it, right? So I understand where you're coming from, and what you're going through right now with the grind, dude. You're very close. You're gonna figure it out, right? It's just a matter of us doing these morning rituals, giving us time to assess what we're really grinding, you know, and then you'll look at it in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the shit you may be taking on your shoulders right now, it's probably not worth your time. And if it is, we may be kind of counting on it. Even and it's going to get harder now because it's, you know, we're going through a streak, right? So you're going to want to babysit it more. You're going to want to actually go above and beyond, which is good, but at the same time you're going to get hurt even more if something happens. Does that make sense? It's going to pull you back and be like, fuck, again?
Yeah.
Right? And then it's going to ripple and it's going to fuck up everything else. So my recommendation is, if you can, just anything that you are chasing right now that's not solid, that's not fucking with you, is not giving you the time, not replying back, dead that shit. Mm-hmm. Remove it all and invest, you know, actually trying to wake up a little early. You probably already do. You know?
I do. I wake up at 6 o'clock. So
now it just depends on what you do, right? It depends on what you do. And what I used to do was read emails, because as a manager, we just fucking get bombarded with emails. And my thing was to have zero read before I get in. Now I stop, you know? It used to bother me because I felt like I was missing something. But at the end of the day, what? You know, there's so many pieces where there's just, you can recover from it. And what I found is that as long as you keep this system of origination going, you'll always have comfort knowing you can replace whatever doesn't go with you, right? So some days you'll score none, some days you'll score 2 or 3, right? You'll have kind of these influxes, but it's really just a matter of finding out when and where to have best contact, right? So if you have licensing that puts in states that don't really have too much traffic, like Florida, Massachusetts. Why? Is because there's a lot of fees. So loan officers are actually scared to sell fees. So they, you know, they don't mess with it, or they offer a rate too high because they're trying to cover those fees. Mm-hmm. So they don't actually get serious help. But if you have those licenses, then you can line yourself up to just focus on that, right? Go through the queue and look up all Florida deals. But that's if you're in Florida. And so paying attention to how you're structuring your current cycle, your current day. So for example, if you're coming in the very first point of the day where you're kind of behind because you got voice messages, emails to catch up on, then we have to just simply adjust and kind of just organize it, right? Like, what's more important? What's a red file right now that can give me the momentum I need during the day? And sometimes it's as simple as, you know, giving a borrower a call with good news, because when you're interacting with them, you're certain that you got a locked deal, right? Like, this is a good deal. And so sometimes that sets the tone, you know, it sets the mood. But you know, where you're at right now as far as having the feeling, right? I salute you, because you still are here putting in your hours and you have a good attitude. And I know right now, you know, it could be worrisome because there's just a lot of different changes. And I think what you did a couple weeks ago to give you the momentum and to give you the right, that's why you're team lead, right? This is to give you that momentum. But at the same time, now you hold yourself to that title, right? Like, I earned it. Now I gotta fucking represent. And what we realize is that whatever, you know, if we fuck up on Monday, Tuesday, and today Wednesday, that shouldn't follow you on Thursday, right? And so whatever you have weighing you down, you just got to cut the cord, because when you're free, you don't got to worry about that shit. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then just focus on what is fucking, you know, what is working with you. One thing that I do notice though is that we're not pricing enough deals. So if I can recommend a system is not how many DAOs you make, it's how many connections you can make, right? So if you're going through the right pockets, it's very easy to start a dialogue with, let's say, 5 leads that we believe we could turn business. Of those 5, we're hoping at least 1 replies back. Mm-hmm. And now it's just strategy, right? And so if this was, let's say, even a past client, I can pull up their old files, see what they do for work, mm-hmm. and kind of time them, right? Know when and where or how long it would take to commute to home. And so now I'm inviting them. I'm using the text through the CRM, and I'm saying, maybe a follow up and say, hey, what time are you leaving today? Or send them over a text or a quick email to line up and just open up that conversation, much like what you're doing right now. But where the fallout that comes at the end that you're probably experiencing now, people go ghost, right? Um, has a lot to do with how we set them up at the very beginning, right? Because at the very beginning, we're trying to earn the business. So we're very courteous, we're very cordial. Sometimes we unknowingly give promises. Like, oh yeah, I'll always give you a call and update. You can call me, but sometimes we're on the phone, so they never reach us. It's because we never set the expectation. And so it's as simple as saying something like, hey, you know what? Now that I validated your ability to proceed, we're going to go ahead and start processing. You're probably going to hear from your processor in a matter of a couple weeks. Until then, we're going to do everything on the back end. So no news is good news. If you ever need to reach me, feel free to call, but I respond faster to email, right? Only time we'll ever reach out to you because we're connected with the servicer is if we need an updated document. So I appreciate you in advance for being prompt on those items, but the next step here is just to look for the appraisal, right? And so if you set up that expectation, they're not really lost and they kind of know the game. They can't really give you a call and be upset that you're not giving them, answers, right? Well, at the same time, if we notice that that's probably not our issue, it's a matter of just the borrower falling off, then we need to work on how we set the expectation. Like when we lock the loan, are they really, really sold? And why I'm saying it's going to be harder now is because we really need a deal now, right? So you're almost treading water, you're walking on eggshells, you don't want to say the wrong thing. When in all reality, we actually have to say the awkward things. With regards to the closing costs, are there any questions? Okay, your interest is this, this, and this, but use your lock script as a tool, and say, okay, I'm going to go and make a request. If you can assure me you can get documents by tomorrow, right? And I don't think you have that issue because what you lock, you elevate pretty quick, right? So the only thing that correct me if I'm wrong, is just issues on the back end.
No, my issue is not. When you say back end, meaning like it's already in the file and it has issues?
Yeah.
No, I don't have that issue.
Okay, so the issue right now is up front to bring in the business?
Exactly.
Okay. And so where is it? Are you just plugged in through the dialer mainly? Is that your
I'm
main
doing
feed?
both. Because the dollar is not really
Okay.
giving you a lot, right? So you have a lot
Sure.
of time between.
What are you
And
running into? What's
I'm
the
just-
main reason why they won't play with you?
It's not that they're not playing. It's just that the quality leads are not. It's not like before. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, for example,
Wait, real quick. What's the definition of a quality lead, just so we're on the same page?
meaning that there's a benefit for them.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So I do probe. You know me. I mean, I know
Yes.
what to say to get them to tell me
To
what
get
it
them
is
in,
that
right.
they looking for, right?
Sure.
And I probe questions and all that stuff, and then so the two places that I am looking at is, of course, one is the Q call, right? And then the other one is me going into Encompass and Shark Tank and actually actively looking for it.
Right.
And when I look into it right now, I'm concentrating on the FHAs.
Right.
And it's quite hard right now to find benefit for those FHA people.
Sure.
There's a really small pocket of time that they haven't refinanced, right? And they have enough equity, for example.
So how are we selling the refinance to the FHAs?
The FHA, when I'm looking at it, when I see that there's benefit, so I would call them. I say, they look like there's some update. So the
What's
first thing
benefit
is,
though? Is the benefit to completely wipe out FHA or just to get them to a conventional? What's
yeah.
like
Well,
benefit?
what I'm looking for is to get them into a conventional.
Got it.
Right. To find enough equity so that if it's not a conventional, then at least I have some way to pay off cash. But if there's no equity there, then I really can't do anything. I can't streamline. I can't do cash. I can't do anything.
Sure.
So the first thing I'm looking for is a decent interest rate, okay, and then also there's some equity in the house, so that I have different options for them.
Sure.
So I did find a couple that was good. You know, like one guy, I call him up and they basically like, okay, yeah, I need to do some cash out. So he just like he right now he has work being done to the house, so we can't lock him right now, but he's ready to go. And then another one actually is in the process. So
Are these
it's
trigger
there, but
leads?
it's hard.
Are they past clients of NAF?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what we have for us is the loan file, right? The original loan
Mm-hmm.
file. So when you're looking at their last loan, I want to make sure you're looking at the right pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And typically the average agent will just look at the interest rate
Mm-hmm.
and the LTV sometimes. But what you also want to pay attention to is their FICO score
Right.
and their DTI,
Correct.
right? And so regardless of what the interest rate was, even if they're at 3.25 FHA, the whole sale is to remove them from FHA, right? And so what this does is it, even though that's the bridge to get into the
Mm-hmm.
conversation, typically what we find is that maybe there's just not enough loan to value, but we could still get them the refund on the FHA and set them up with a payment deferral and an escrow refund and give them a surge of cash, right? And so with those who used FHA, they used it primarily to put a minimum down payment. So technically, they never had enough money to buy a big house. And then when they move into these homes, you're paying attention to if it's their first time home, and paying attention, of course, to the FICO score and the DTI. And so the sale is to help remove them from FHA, and the whole reason is because at the time that we funded your loan, the debt to income ratio was above 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're notifying you of different developments and improvements that have happened in the area that's going to help you create cash flow to help improve that debt to income ratio, because at the time we funded your loan, it was about 50% of your gross income.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hopefully, you've paid that down, which, of course, as we say this, they're going to say, shit, no, I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I owe a little bit more. So, okay, great, let me go ahead and help you, right? And then what we're doing is we're just building up the leverage that you're good at probing at to push them over the edge. And whether we sell them a higher rate on an FHA, the whole purpose was to get them the cash, get them the payment deferral, the escrow refund, the $500 from escrow, right?
Right.
And then rebuild their FICO score so that in 6 months or 12 months, then we can look at the credit score and get them into a conventional. But this becomes a stepping stone, right? So in 6 months from now, you'll have lesser debt. I'm saving this much money, dollars, but I know their whole premise was to get out of FHA. But when you position yourself with a solution and answer, their alternative is to not get the cash,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is to not get the payment. And so I think that kind of view on these leads will, you're not gonna treat some differently unless it's clear, right? Like, okay, that this is, they're probably not gonna move right now. They had a 36% DTI. It's probably legit. They had a 780 FICO, but if they're below 720, I'm calling them, because now the whole leverage is saying, you know what, at the time that we helped you, you're at a 680. Since we got you this low rate, we covered your closing costs, and you're looking at the original file.
Yeah,
I would
that makes
imagine you,
sense.
yeah, I would imagine you were able to create some savings and lower your debt to income ratio. Well, the reason why we're calling you is because when we funded your loan, your debt to income ratio was at about 50% of your gross income. Whether that's changed now or not, we still give you a complimentary notice to help you improve that. So if you're currently spending, or I'm sorry, if you currently need that extra savings, it could probably pay down the other debts that cause your debt to income ratio to be so high at the time of funding. This is just a courtesy measure. Of course, the upside is to help you afford your mortgage. But you know what? While I was sending out the information, I noticed an increase in property value. And I wanted to send you a report. Again, it's a courtesy report. We do this complimentary to help you exit out of FHA. As a matter of fact, I noticed that your MI, and you'd be able to see it right on the green file, your mortgage insurance was right about $300 per month. So I want to show you how to remove mortgage insurance because of the pickup in equity in the home. So I'm going to go ahead and send that out to you. And this is why KG works, right? Is because you can feel it. It's headed in a direction, the way he drives, right? It's not like, okay, well, how do you feel about that? You know what I mean? Like it's coming out in a tone of asking, right? Where KG is coming out of a tone of follow me. Does that make sense? It's a completely little bit different switch, and KG sounds like he's headed down a path under the premise of doing this, but then positions himself where he racks up the emotion and then presents whatever he can sell. and then it becomes a plan. And so now you start hearing him talk about, oh yeah, in about 12 months from now, we're going to look at this situation. We'll talk about cutting down the term. And so now it becomes a long-term relationship, not just a quick transaction. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But you have to position them properly. And so if we're having an issue on bringing the traffic in, then we have to pay attention to, well, what are we telling the traffic to begin with? Not only that, but how are we selecting the traffic? And so if we have this thought that you have to have over 3.75 on an FHA for us to even make sense, because we're putting two and two together, it puts them at a 4.3 conventional. We're looking at it with a filtered lens. What we have to actually also consider is the potential of this person more than likely having debt, and they'll probably just do it for the payment deferral and the escrow refund at the end of the day, right? But it's just a matter of when we tell them, like, I could tell them that up front, or I can build up the suspense and then present it to them after I showed them almost the downside. Well, if you didn't do it, how are you going to handle this debt? Does that make sense?
Right.
So, but maybe it's different for you. So when you're trying to create this traffic and you do get that lead, and then you say, hey, you know what, I can remove you out of this FHA loan and probably get you some cash, and then you finally do, and then you present it to them. Where are we losing connection? Is it on the first call or the second call at the pitch?
Actually, I don't think I have a problem too much about presenting the benefit. I think right now when I go and mine, the first thing is finding the benefit. I'm spending a lot of time trying to find that benefit, but I was concentrating, like you said, on the interest rate, and if I can remove it, rather than looking at other things like the credit scores and
right.
the debts.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now that opened up a little bit more, that I can not just concentrate on that only, but I can see a little bit more, few more things.
Yes.
So
well, not only that, but it's also going to remove the filter
yeah.
of what you believe is benefit. Right. What we believe is benefit to someone else is different. Right. Like $100 to me versus $100 to them is way different. Mm-hmm. Right. So if we tend to do that, and we'll do it all the time when we pitch like an FHA streamline, it'll come through our tone like it's not really benefit, because we judge what was benefit. Right. So if you actually just switch the approach and say, all about the premise of removing the mortgage insurance to help you with your debt to income ratio, this is now I'm helping you. Mm-hmm. Right. And then tell them that, hey, this is actually how you do it.
Okay. Yeah. So I think like right now it's just because of the filters, I guess you can say, it just make it harder for me to actually find that nugget. You know what I mean?
So the traffic is there. That's the good news, right? The traffic is there. We know the pockets of leads are there.
Yeah, I know it's there. It's just right now it's just so hard to find one that makes sense to me.
Sure.
But now that I remove the filters, now maybe I can pick up a few more.
Yes.
And then
because your backup plan, right? Your backup plan is that you could do a full doc rate and term refinance on an FHA, but the whole goal now at that time that you discovered, you see their credit report, you see their credit score, you see their debt balances, and then you're able to calculate, when their taxes and their insurance are coming up, right, and how much their escrow refund is.
Another Nick No Banger.